our newest episode of Nook News. I'm your host, Beth Hadfield. I'm the activity coordinator at the Center for Active Living in Plymouth. And today I have with me a really wonderful friend, Conni DiLego, former director of the Center for Active Living in Plymouth. Welcome, Conni.
Hi, Beth.
Glad to have you on the show today.
I like the reverse roles.
So today I would like to continue a discussion with Conni that she and I started in the center about a week ago. And we are doing this because we all need to get out there and vote. This conversation with Conni began on 2 different days when we had people on both sides of question 1 come and speak at the center. And then a day or 2 later, we had a discussion on medical cannabis. And it brings us to today. And 2 weeks from today, we will all be going to the polls and voting. At least I am hoping that we're all going to the polls and voting because it's very important. So, the issue of voting rights in the United States has been fought throughout United States history. Eligibility to vote in the United States is established both in the U.S. Constitution and in its amendments and by state law. Casting your ballot is the most important of all the powers an American citizen have. It's the one that the country takes for granted. Why is it so important today for us to sit here and talk about voting?
Well, it's important today, Beth, but it's been important all along. There's no question about it. But my passion, my devotion to getting people out to vote right now is because we're in turmoil. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, you've got to see that it's in turmoil. And I don't like the way the candidates and politicians have turned out. This horrible backbiting, throwing stuff at each other, and it's just not American. It's not, it's just not the way I wasn't brought up that way. I know you weren't brought up that way, And so we have to do something to change that. We do still have the power to make the change, but we can't do it sitting back. We can't do it back and say, oh, I don't like the way things are. No, get up off your duff and go to the voting poll, and cast your vote. That being said, we could get into the whole thing about, look how hard we fought for this right. Whether you're indigenous people, the black people, the Native American, the African American vote, let me be politically correct, and I don't mean to be facetious, but back then, in '64, when Johnson finally signed that civil rights bill, Selma, Alabama, there were horrible atrocities going on. We had some clips, but I don't have them now. But people can remember. Anybody that was raised in that time, I remember those horrible water hoses being shot at, poured on the black people as they were trying to cross the bridge and for equal rights. Even just trying to go to school wasn't a right. And then go back a little farther with women's, the suffragette votes. They were just as beaten, not just as beaten, but they were beaten and abused and harassed and all kinds of atrocities formed against women who wanted the vote. That women vote? What are you talking about, right? Well, not only now can women vote, women can run for office, and we've got more women running for office than have ever been in the time of history. I sound like somebody else's move. Anyway, women are running for office, and we need to look at them. Not dispel them. We need to look at their records. We need to see what they stand for, and not just the women that are running, their counterparts. Anybody who's running for a candidate office, you need to be informed. Don't vote because your mother votes this way, or your son votes that way, or your best friend is this way, or your best friend is a candidate. You have to vote according to what you believe and what is the best for this country. How do you see it going? I see we need some changes. you know, and that's in my heart of hearts, that's how I'm going to vote. But it's up to everybody to really be an informed voter. Just don't go in and hit a ballot because you think you're Republican or you think you're Democrat or you think you're independent or whatever. Be informed.
Before Conni and I started the show, we talked about a lot of different things. And I'm going to back up a little bit. So in September, we had a primary election. And our discussion got into what ballots you get when you go to your precinct place. And ironically, which now that I know I didn't particularly like, but if you're registered as a Democrat, you're only getting a Democratic ballot. If you're registered as a Republican, you're only getting a Republican ballot. But if you're registered as not registered,
It's called unenrolled.
unenrolled,
That's the independent.
then you get both. It doesn't seem...
No, you get both names. I mean, it's one
It's
ballot with both
two
on it.
names, but if I'm registered as either party, but I don't really want to vote for the designated party,
You change your vote. I mean, you change your status.
yes,
And you can call the town hall and do that.
okay.
And let them know that you know, that you want to change. But we just talked to Pearl, and in the primary, you will get a ballot with both on there because you're picking either Republican or Democrat to run, right?
Right.
And so you've selected. Now, when the general election comes along, that's the vote you're going to be now, Republican or Democrat or
Right.
unenrolled.
So on your ballot, when you go vote in 2 weeks, and you need to vote in 2 weeks.
That's right.
That's why we have these signs here with us. You need to vote. When you go vote in 2 weeks, you will have every option to make your best decision, and we're really hoping that people are doing their homework before they walk in, you know, and it's not just homework on the candidates. We have questions on the ballot this time, and you need to be informed. You know, we did have the discussion last week about question one. Question one is about the nurses. I'm not gonna go into it. We did hear from both sides. It's definitely a lot to think about, but you really have to think about it before you walk in and cast your vote.
Yeah.
You know.
Can I go back a little bit?
Sure.
This is how we're going to do this conversation anyway, because there's so much to
Right.
get across. But in terms of knowing what's on the ballot, you can go online. There's a couple of websites that Tom is going to post for us, and one of them is with the state Secretary of State, and it's www.sec.state, whatever. We'll post it. But if you go there, you'll get any information you want. You can get a sample ballot. You can find out what district you're in if you don't know what precinct you have to vote at. If you're a registered voter, you put your name in there and your area code. Zip code, and it'll come up and tell you what your precinct is. If you are newly registered, like I was out of state for a while and I'm back, so I'm re-registered here when I had my old address. They changed it, but when I was notified that my registration went through, it told me which precinct I go to.
Okay.
So you can find out. You can call the town hall if you need to. Call the town clerk's office. So you find out what precinct that you're voting in, and then you go to vote. I think that I'm losing track of what I was going to say, but that brought up this other thing. How do I vote?
Yes,
And
I was going to get
yeah,
there, so.
a conversation that I had just the other night was talking about this young woman who is a millennial, and some people use that word with a millennial. No, they're active. They need to be active voters because we need them. We need the youth. We need their votes.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right here. Millennial. Are 18 to something, or are they 20 and 30s?
I don't know, ask them.
Oh, yeah, I don't know that answer either.
I don't know.
but
It's a wide range.
And we're definitely, in this discussion, millennial means the younger generation.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
So we'll clarify that.
Right. And so this young lady who is about 34, all right,
Okay.
and still I consider her millennial. Anyway, she was saying that, her preference to the current administration or whatever else, and that she didn't like this or that and the other. So the question was put to her, did you vote? She says, I don't know how. What do I do? And so I think that that's something that I've not ever thought of, because we were raised to vote.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, we went with our parents when they voted, and watched the whole process and couldn't wait till we could vote and stuff. I couldn't wait to be able to vote. It was second only to getting my driver's license, as a kid growing up. So what do you do? All right. First of all, you register. Register with the town hall. Go online. You can go online and register. You can go to plymouth.ma.gov. And the town clerk's office, go to the town clerk's office, and Larry Pizer has all the information you need on that and how to register to vote. Then once you get your registration card, and it's voter day, it's ballot day, you go to the precinct that you've been assigned, open the door and you walk in, and there's tables set up, and you'll walk over to the table and they'll ask you how you registered.
Well, they ask you where you live first, because everything's sorted by street addresses.
Right, good point. So they'll ask you where you live, and you have to match that with your registration. Now, if you happen to get there and they say, oh, I don't have your registration, and you're registered, ask them to check the inactive file, because sometimes if I hadn't, it might be on an old address.
Okay.
And you're still registered, but you don't want to leave there not voting. And if they can't find it, you get a not preliminary, temporary. Your vote will be cast, but it's in an envelope. And then the election officials will go double check to make sure you're registered. If you're not, you have 6 days, I think, to register, to make it legal. So your vote will still count. So then after you give your address, they say Republican or Democrat. You go to they give you a ballot. Go over to the little booth, get in there, pick out who you want. Walk over to another table, they'll ask you your address again, and just to double check.
Make sure.
And then everything's all set. There's a little thing, you slip it in and you're voted. So it's walk in, get a paper, go over, mark the paper. Cast your ballot, and then walk. And you know something? I always feel good walking out.
I agree with you.
It's, this is a right that we fought for, and I don't take that lightly. I don't take that lightly at all. I think it's part of being an American. No, we can't lose that right. We just can't lose that right. And voter suppression is going on in this country right now, unfortunately.
So I did my homework before we came to sit here and chit-chat. And this particular comment, and I took the excerpt from the College Media Network, really hit home. It is one thing to protest and post on social media, but that alone changes nothing. We read a lot on social media, people rant, but it doesn't help.
No.
It doesn't help us. The only real help is when you go and cast that ballot and your vote is heard. And then along the way, sometimes we have to remind whoever is now in office that our vote still counts. And that's when you call that representative and you make your voice heard, because we cannot sit back in this country and hope that the person next to us, whether it's your spouse, your best friend, your significant other, it doesn't matter who it is, your parent, they're not making that choice for you.
No, they're not. And we're pretty lucky here in Massachusetts. You need an ID card to vote, but it doesn't have to be a photo ID. Okay, you can have a utility bill, you can have your driver's license, which does have a picture. You can have anything with your current name and address on it. Will suffice. It doesn't have to be a photo ID, and I just looked that up because I was a little concerned about that because of the ID issue. But I don't mind that. I don't mind having to prove that I am who I say I am and live where I say I live, but just, but in other states, that's not the case.
Over the years, there have been voter repression, and you were actually informing me about things going on recently in our country, just south of us, that I didn't know was happening. Can you
like
tell
Georgia?
us? Yes, tell us a little bit about what's going on in Georgia. And I'm just
All right, well,
floored
I'll
that
admit-
anywhere in the world it's happening
and
in
it's
the
big-
United States.
It's big time in the United States. And I won't mention any names primarily because I can't think of the man's name because I blocked it. But there's a gentleman that is running for governor of Georgia. He is also the head of the election committee. He is responsible for the computers and how they work and how they run. Well, right now, this was 2 days ago, there were over 100,000 voters who were disqualified from the roster. They were unregistered or not. They're not going to be allowed to vote. The reason being, the way the computer is set up, it is your name and address have to be exactly the way their computer says it is. So if I had Ms. Conni DiLego and I didn't put a period on it and their computer put a period on it, it's out. If I had Donald Joseph DiLego Jr., Jr., and they had the word junior spoken or written out, or they had JR with a period on it and I didn't, cast out. So the computers going through the roster have kicked out over 100,000. 70% of those are black. One of the reasons for that is, I think, in my opinion, some of the African American people have some beautiful names. They make up their own names, maybe part of grandma's name and part of auntie's name or uncle's, and they put them together and they make Verline or whatever. They create a really pretty name.
Creative.
Okay, that name is not necessarily in the computer. So you know how spell check works. They might put, let's say, I don't know, Valine. Of course, that's not an uncommon name. I'm just being hypothetical.
No, that's fine.
And they spell it Valeen. And the computer pops up Valine. They're out. Well, with so many names being different than what's in spell check, these names are being tossed out by the hundreds, by the thousands. That's one place. And it hasn't changed. This is today. They haven't, and those ones that are kicked out, they get a chance to re-register, but not in time for the election. All right?
So where they live, it must be like here. If you weren't registered to vote by
A certain
XY date, you can't
Right.
vote in
and
the
if their
election in 2
registration
weeks.
is considered illegal, or
Okay.
then you have Native American atrocities. Still. Arizona, North Dakota. North Dakota has 5 tribes. Arizona has 5 tribes, and Mexico has at least 4 or 5 tribes. I'll just tell you a quick story from when I lived out there and I wanted to register to vote. This was a while ago. It was in the 90s. But I was living in a sheep camp, not in the middle of town. Well, the reservations are spread out. That's the way people live. So I went down to register. I had to go to Flagstaff to register. They wouldn't register me because I didn't have a street address. I tried to explain to them I don't live on a street. I live in the middle of the desert. Well, that wasn't good enough. You go back and get the mileage and tell me how far it is. I went back and I measured it, and it was 12 miles. So I went back and I told them that, and she said, "No, we need to know every turn. How far?" They made me go it was a 12-mile hike, drive on the desert, and I had to measure from point A to point B. How long was that? Point B to point C. How long was that? And then the left turn. How long was that?
So you were giving them directions. I went from cactus A to
Yeah,
cactus
just
B.
pretty much, absolutely,
Okay.
exactly. And I finally got it through, but who's gonna do that? And that is exactly what the restrictions are in those 3 states. If you don't have a physical street address, they will not let you register. So, what some people had done is just make up an address. Okay, if that's what I need to do, I'll make up an address. But then, when the election officials went through to check and see what that, and they do, go through and check to see what that address, there is no address. There's no 13 Bluff or Sand Dune 3, right? So it's crazy, and that's what's going on today. But that's another thing that we need to vote against, voter repression, and the laws need to be, they were diminished in 2013 to allow some of this stuff to go on. Anyway, I'm on my high horse. But we can't let that happen. We can't let that happen, Beth, and it is happening. So, we're lucky in Massachusetts. And we have some very wonderful, decent, caring human beings running in our candidacy. You know, and we know so many of them, and so many of them have been helpful to us at the center, Center for Active Living, and with seniors, and with housing, and with the grandparents, and so on and so forth. And I really deeply care for all of them. But I have to vote my conscience. I have to vote what I feel, you know, when I look at their histories and see how they vote and how I want, you know, my ideal of things, I have to go with that. So.
But that's what it's all about. In the end, when you go and stand to cast your ballot, you need to be able to sit with whatever vote is cast.
That's right.
And if it's different than the party you're registered for, so be it.
Yep.
It's how it is.
Yep.
I wanted to go back because you had some numbers that talked about people registered to vote in Plymouth County, and then how many people actually voted. So we had a couple of different set of numbers.
Well, I think I have the state, Massachusetts. No, this is the country. The state of Massachusetts has, no, Plymouth County has 355,593 registered voters.
That's Plymouth County, not just our
Right.
town, just
Because
clarifying.
Plymouth town only has 60,000, roughly
Right.
60,000, but 355,000. That's in Plymouth County. So all the neighboring, this one just tells us how many, the percentage of Democrats, Republicans, and Libertarians.
I think the paper in your right hand,
This
at the
one,
bottom,
this one is
was that
in
the
the whole
primary?
state. In the whole state. In the whole state of Massachusetts in 2018, there was 4,493,007 registered voters. And of those voters, 1,004,006 voted. 22%. 22.36% of the registered voters in Massachusetts voted in the
So that was the September
state primary.
election.
Yeah. So that's a primary, but still, that's when you choose.
That's right.
That's when you choose who's
So,
going to be on the ballot.
If we're sitting on our duff, we're not getting anything done. But it's true, and that's why we're sitting here right now. We're here because we absolutely have to vote. We can't sit still anymore. There's too many things going on that require people to stand up and be heard.
We stand to lose some civil rights, to be honest with you. There's, I guess I can't get too political. I'd like to, but I'll behave. Well, I'm not going to lose my job, so.
I'm like, you got nothing to lose. I might, you don't.
But I mean, there are some serious, depending on how your conscience votes and what your ideals are, there are some hard fought things in the country that we did, like Roe v. Wade.
Right.
And I know everybody does. Obviously, everybody doesn't agree with that, but that is something the majority of people and women fought for and passed it, and now we stand to lose it. There's a very good chance with the way that the justice system is being set up.
Okay.
Both the Superior Court and the lower courts.
I couldn't understand why you were thinking that way, but I do now.
It's a very conservative, very, very conservative. And women's rights, you know, not just with Roe v. Wade, women's rights everywhere. We got to be careful. We got to be careful. And the way the budget cuts our tax relief and everything, tax relief is not for us. Tax relief is for that higher 1%. I'm sorry. You know, we're supposed to be getting some benefit of it, and maybe there is, but boy, not the majority of it is. The majority of it is the higher echelon of the wealthier. That seems to be the way the country's going, and that's not us. That's not the majority. That's not the 99%.
That's not all the people sitting and watching our show right now.
That's right.
It's the
You know,
everyday people that are working or retired or newly retired or going to retire.
Right.
But those going to retire may not be able to retire, and you might still have to have a job even after retirement.
You know, and you're right. Absolutely correct.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, but the thing too, with the state elections, you can say, all right, well, the president isn't running on this primary election that's coming up. There's no president on there. Oh, yes, there is. Oh, yes, there is. His name isn't there. But, and he's even said this. He has said, a vote on this election is a vote for me. So, you know, if you're happy with that, go right
So be
ahead.
it.
But if you're not happy with that, get out there and put your name on there. Stand up and stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Just
Stand
plain
up
just
and be heard.
Stand up and vote.
We just have a very few short minute left. And I actually wanted to read something that I found on WKVUE out of Austin, Texas, but I really liked what it said. It said, so your vote 100% makes a difference. You taking time out of your day to head to the polls makes a huge difference. The thing about lawmakers and politicians is that you have the power to fire and hire them. You get to hold them accountable. If you don't like it, of course, if you don't do it, of course, they're going to do whatever they want to do. Do you think the criminal justice system needs to change? Go vote. Do you want a better transportation system? Go vote. Do we need more affordable housing? Go vote. There's no excuse. And by not weighing in, you're doing more harm than good. The bottom line here is, voting is your civic duty, and if you don't do it, you're giving up your right. And there's no time like the present to take our rights back and do what we need to do. So, Tuesday, November 6th, go vote. Conni, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. It was fabulous and wonderful, even though the roles are reversed. And we'll see you again soon.
All right.
Thank you.
So 1, 2, 3,
Vote!